Well, welcome everyone to PE 335, the theory of coaching, strength, and conditioning. Sorry for the voice, kind of got a cold, so voice may go in and out a little bit. So hopefully you can hear me, and we'll get started. So today's lecture focuses on the structure and functions of the body systems, as explained in the book Essentials of Strength and Conditioning. If anyone is serious about leaning into coaching as a strength and conditioning coach or interested in the overall aspects of strength and conditioning, it is the best book, in my opinion, to get. It is also the book that is used to get certified in the CSCS as a certified strength and conditioning coach through the NSCA. Most of our, if not all, of our topics will be related to that book, and I will be periodically sharing pages and articles from that book from outside sources of research, but most of which will come from Essentials of Strength and Conditioning. Today we'll look at the skeletal, muscular, nervous, cardiovascular, and respiratory systems, along with the endocrine systems, which all are part of the body systems for the functions. The goal is to understand how these systems allow movement and adapt to exercise. Everything that we do as strength and conditioning coaches have to adapt to positions, movements in a game, in a match, whatever it may be. Everything has to correlate to one another, not just one area focusing on the other. For the second slide, introduction. Human performance isn't just about muscles. So we're not bodybuilders. We don't just focus on a muscle group. We don't just focus on how much do we bench, how much do we squat. It's all about the integration of muscles, multiple systems working together. As I said, you can't just rely on your pectorals to do something if your delts and your bicep and your lats have to all work in one for everything to encapsulate together and work. Strength conditioning coaches and professionals must understand that both the structure, meaning the anatomy, and the function, which is our physiology, again, work together. That's why many of you, if you are in exercise science, will take anatomy and physiology. They go together. There's no one or the other. Everything has to correlate between the two. The systems we'll focus on are most directly affected by training. So musculoskeletal, nervous, cardiovascular, respiratory, and endocrine, like I said, using all the systems in one. Knowing how these systems allow us to safely and effectively design training programs is the overall goal. If you read the syllabus, the main arching final is going to be you creating a program for a given team for 6 to 8 weeks, showing me how it's safe, how it's going to be effective for the training, how it's going to be effective for that athlete, and how you can incorporate everything that we learn from this course into that program. So the first system we'll talk about is the skeletal system. It provides the structure or the structural framework that supports the body and protects the organs. It's the overarching of all of our bones and every kind of skeletal part that you can think of. It also plays a role in movement. So if you look at the image, bones will serve as levers. They work with joints as fulcrums and the muscles providing the force. So if I use my elbow joint for an example, you can see that wherever the dumbbell is, that's going to be a lever system depending on how that dumbbell is held. If you hold the dumbbell at a 90-degree angle, you're going to put a lot of force onto that bicep through the movement. If you bring it up to the shoulder, the bicep is essentially close to taken out of that equation. Now you're holding the dumbbell at shoulder height, you're able to sustain that hold for a lot longer. The distance in which that matters as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The skeleton has two different divisions: the axial skeleton, and which includes the skull, the spine, and the rib cage, and it's important for protection of our posture, um, and just overall protection, like I said, of organs. And the appendicular skeleton, which includes the limbs and is primarily responsible for the movement. So it's a lot of our appendages, a lot of our movement systems that we will cover later in biomechanics. As many of you know, bone health is very crucial for athletes since bone density and strength affect performance and assist with injury risk. The healthier our bones are, the less likely for injury in that bone. Less broken bones. Less broken bones may lead to less severed um, arteries or tendons down the road. Again, protects your organs. If you break a rib, you're more likely for lung issue if it could be punctured. So if you have stronger bone density, you're going to be more protected as a whole. As I said, we'll move on to the joints and the movements. Joints are where two bones meet. So your elbow joint, hip joint, knee joint, and their structure determines the different possible movement. You can see that on the diagram, there's many types of joints. We have fibrous, synovial, and joints with cartilage. Those are the three major types. So the fibrous are immovable. They won't really have much movement as to them. Cartilage will have slightly movable. Apologies. And synovial are freely moving. They'll rotate. I mean, there'll be a hinge joint is a synovial at our elbow. Um, as it says, the ball and socket joint is our hip. It acts as a ball into a socket joint, and it can rotate in many different directions. It can go out to the side, it can go forward, it can rotate. It gives it that free movement for everything that you see. Range of motion is very important, as many of you know, athletes or non-athletes. The better you can move, the better your body will feel. It's important because it'll influence, as I said, flexibility, strength, expressions, and injury prevention. If you are an overly tight person and you struggle to bend over, touch your toes, get past your knees, your hamstrings are overly tight. If your hamstrings are overly tight, you could lend yourself to hamstring issues, glute issues. You could put a risk on your spine as well. Many people who have spinal issues when it comes to tightness can be linked back to that hamstring. If your hamstring is tight, it'll lend into the spine, cause a lot of issues from that standpoint. If you have a limited or unstable joint, it can reduce performance and increase injury. So again, lending back to what I just said, if I'll stay with hamstring, it's the easiest example for now. If your hamstring is tight and you go to jump or you go to sprint, that hamstring is a lot more likely to get strained, pull if it is overly tight. Now, the adverse can also be true. If you are overly flexible and your body moves too freely, then that may allow for another injury in a case. So it is very important for strength and conditioning coaches to understand we need tightness, but we can't have over tightness. We want flexibility, but we can't be overly flexible in certain areas. We need to have a balance of strength and flexibility to be able to sustain baseball, who may go January all the way to June. Soccer teams who play in the fall, then they'll play spring games, and then they'll play summer. Same with volleyball and softball and many other sports who will play year round. Even football, who will train in the off season from January all the way till May, have 2 weeks off, train all summer, and then play their full season for 11 weeks straight. It all encompasses in one to be able to balance the two of flexibility and strength, so that your athletes will not get injured, or your clients if you go the personal training or private route. Moving on to the muscular system, um, I have linked a video in this that explains the sliding filament theory uh, in very good detail with images, and I recommend you giving it a watch. I will summarize this in this video session. But muscular system is responsible for producing force and movement as well as maintaining posture. So if you have weaker back muscles, a lot of people may see somebody who's slouched over, always sitting with their shoulders leaning forward, having this rounded back issue, and not maintaining a good solid posture. So it does not just include pushing as much weight off or lifting as much weight as you possibly can. It encompasses keeping your posture straight, keeping your limbs and appendages in certain areas. It keeps your neck upright through your neck muscles. It allows us to talk, to smile, to frown, to do anything that our body does. Our muscles are going to be a part of that. They're organized in a certain kind of hierarchy, and individual fibers are grouped into fascicles, which bundle together to form the whole muscle. So you may have small different areas of the entire muscle, and then you'll have fascicles, and then inside of that you'll have individual fibers that are significantly smaller. So if I use my headphones, we'll have the muscle, then we'll have the fascicles, and then we'll have fibers within. So it all encompasses into one that makes up the entire muscle itself. The contraction is, as I said, explained by the sliding filament theory, where actin and myosin filaments slide past each other in order to shorten the muscle. So I'm going to shorten as the video describes. Let's say this is my myosin on the bottom. We're going to have actin on top, and using many different parts of the body and the release of calciums and other elements, that is going to obtain and grab on to the actin, which is then, when muscle is contracted, going to pull it closer and across the myosin. So you're going back and forth with lengthening going out and shortening coming in. Again, there are different type of fiber types as well. So we have type 1 fibers, which tend to be slower twitch, fatigue resistant. You see this more in endurance sports. You cross-country athletes, distance runners, distance swimmers. We may see it in some rowing, some soccer, but it really depends on, in soccer, the position. If you are one who may need higher endurance running on a wing, or in cross country is the best example for this. They run distances. You may run 10, 13 miles, you may run 8 miles, you may run distances, but either way, you're running a distance. Your body type is going to be more type 1 on a slower twitch, which means you can go longer because it takes a lot longer for your body to fatigue, and you're built for endurance. And then the opposite is type 2. Type 2 are the fast twitch. They produce more force. They're better for power, speed. You see a lot more type 2 in soccer, or in volleyball. You see some athletes in soccer who have that ability to switch gears and overall have one of the fastest sprints. You may see wide receivers, defensive backs in football are very fast twitch based. Baseball has a mix of both, depending on the position. Olympic weightlifters are almost strictly type 2. Some of the most explosive athletes that there are, lifting a lot of weight in a high amount of force. It's all based for power and speed, but that also lends to faster fatiguing. So In volleyball, you may have a mix of both. So your matches, your sets may last a long period of time. So you rely on the type two to be able to have that explosive force to get to a dive ball, especially if you are liberos in the middle, having to move left to right very quickly in a standpoint. But you also have to last for a long time. Matches lasting 25 points, and if it is not points, my apologies, but up to 25 can take a long time. Winning by two, uh, you have to move in a fast standpoint for a long period of time. So, teaching an athlete how to build not only that power and the force, but also how to build that endurance off of that power is very crucial for a strength conditioning professional. Training can change the characteristics and performance of these fibers, making them highly adaptable. As I just mentioned, you don't want an athlete to be just type 1 or just type 2. Even cross country athletes at the end of a race, if they're neck and neck, they need to have some type 2 fibers to be able to push at that end of that race and give that extra bout of power, extra bout of speed to be able to win. Next, we'll move on to the neuromuscular, and this connects the nervous system to the muscles, allowing us to control muscles or movements. So it is a sensor which will send from your body to that part of the muscle, saying, "Hey, I need to lift this water bottle up to my mouth to be able to drink it." Without that, the bottle's just going to sit there. Again, allows us to control that movement. Motor units is a motor neuron and allows muscle fibers to innervate. So again, smaller units are used for fine control, while larger units are used for powerful movements. Most of the smaller units are going to be used for grabbing the bottle, moving around with writing a pencil, whatever it may be. Larger units are going to be for lifting a heavy squat, doing a clean, doing a sprint, using bigger movements in larger amounts of force. And the size principle explains the motor unit recruitment. So the body activates small, endurance oriented units first and progressively larger ones as more force is needed, as just explained. If I'm using a highlighter to write, I don't need my larger motor units to use that. But if I'm lifting heavy weight, I can't rely on my smaller, more endurance based movements or units to move that weight. It's going to not be the correlation that we need. So we use the larger units to lift heavier weight to move a lot more force. Training can improve how efficiently the nervous system recruits motor units, which is why beginners get stronger quickly without big muscle size increases. So we see this a lot when we have incoming freshmen who may not be as apt to weight room or to weight training, or if they've been stuck in a specific training system their entire life. If you switch them into a different system, you'll see bigger gains a lot quicker, which is why if you go to a new school and you come in and you have seniors who are strong and proficient in what they're doing, they might not see the 20-25 pound gain that a freshman may see. Freshmen tend to be in the more immature stage of their training, and seniors tend to be near the peaking point, if not just past on some occasions, depending on how old they are for that uh, for that style of training. And then we have proprioceptors, such as like the muscle spindles, the Golgi tendon organs, which I put the Golgi tendon reflex up as a slide image. They provide feedback on stretch tension, so they protect against injury and help us coordinate the movement. A lot of the reflex has to do with that as well. Skip one. Slide 7, which is our cardiovascular. This is going to deliver our oxygen and our nutrients to the muscles and remove waste particles, which is essentially what we want in our system. The heart has two sides. That's why I put the heart. It has two different functions. It's not just one organ doing the exact same thing all the way through. The right side of the heart pumps the blood to the lungs for oxygenation, and the left side will pump oxygen-rich blood to the rest of the body. As shown in the slide, you can see that from the right, it'll move through the right side of the heart, down to the lungs, from the lungs, through the left side of the heart, into the body. So it's a circular system. As you look through that diagram, and it's color coded blue and red for you to be able to follow along which way the pathway may go. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, veins will return it, and capillaries exchange the oxygen and nutrients with the tissues. So it's a big mixture. It's not just one part of your body. It encompasses everything that goes through your entire body, which is why heart health is one of the most crucial things, especially for athletes. Understanding, hey, we have zone 2 at 70% or at a certain percentage. Go to zone 3, go to zone 1, different kind of zones, which we'll talk about later in the semester. But it is crucial to understand that the heart does not just do one primary thing, it encompasses the entire part of the body. During training, stroke volume, so the amount of blood per beat or pumped per beat, and the cardiac output, so the total volume per minute increase. So the more you're working, the more the blood is going to be pumping, which most of us know. The harder you work, the higher your heart rate gets. So the body is trying to pump more blood through the system so that you can sustain longer. Some chronic training adaptations include lower resting heart rate, improved efficiency, and greater endurance capacity. You see this in a lot more high intensity sports and high intensity exercises. One right off the top of the head that most of you will know, CrossFit is a high intensity sport. Some say it's training, some say it's not. Either way, it's high intensity more often than not. And when doing high intensity exercises, your longevity and your heart rate will begin to stay lower and lower resting. So if you start, let's say, at 80 beats per minute and you for resting and you continuously do high intensity exercises with bouts of rest and strength training, your heart rate will decrease in your resting heart rate. So you'll get down to the 70s, down to the 60s, to the point where you are able to relax quicker, which allows you to recover quicker for your sport. Now, I'm not saying to go and do CrossFit. I'm just saying high intensity bouts of exercise will allow you to have a lower resting heart rate and to allow your body to recover a little bit more efficiently and quicker when the time is needed. Moving on to the respiratory system, this is when it brings oxygen into the body and removes carbon dioxide. So if you sat in a room with carbon dioxide, not going to breathe. You need oxygen in order into your system in order to function almost everything in your body. Air enters through the lungs, which gas exchange occurs at tiny sacs called the alveoli. And then oxygen diffuses into the blood, while CO2 diffuses out when we exhale, which is why you take oxygen in, and when you breathe out, you're releasing carbon dioxide. So you're removing the carbon dioxide from the body. The diaphragm is the main muscle in which of breathing. But during exercise, other muscles like the intercostals, the abdomen may also assist. If you are breathing heavy, you know that your abs are working, you know that your intercostals are working. Everything will encompass into one. It won't be just the diaphragm, especially at higher bouts of exercise. Respiration adjusts to match the energy demands. Fairly what I just said. For example, ventilation rate increases in intensity to meet the oxygen needs and clear CO2. So if you're moving at a high rate of speed, you're going to be breathing heavier as you need. You're going to be breathing to get that oxygen into your system as fast as you can. If you're on a slower pace where you can run and you can talk to somebody while you're running, you may not need as big a breath. You may not need as high a ventilation rate. Again, this may depend on the environment that you're in, but a sustainable environment you'll be breathing a little bit slower at a lower rate of speed. Um, and then the final part of this for this time being is there are two different types of training which will affect the respiratory system. So the aerobic training improves the respiratory efficiency, while the anaerobic, so a little bit more power based movements, will increase the tolerance for high CO2 levels. Again, if you're on a sprint, you're going to get to the end of the sprint, you're going to have more CO2. You're going to be trying to breathe faster to get that oxygen in. When you're doing aerobic, so more endurance based training, you have more efficiency to breathe and control the breathing as you go. The final system that we'll discuss today is the endocrine system. Very brief overview today. The endocrine system uses hormones to regulate the metabolism, growth, recovery, and adaptation. So everything that goes on in the body, we have many different glands that'll help with this. Testosterone promotes muscle growth and the repair. Growth hormone will also support tissue building. Cortisol helps with mobilizing the energy, but in an excess can also break down tissue. So, especially for men, if your cortisol is too high, which is a stress relief or a stress released hormone, it can increase fat. It can decrease the amount of testosterone in the system, which may make you feel more fatigued, make you more tired, or those are the same thing. I'm fatigued. Make you fatigued. It'll add unwanted weight gain, but this can all be regulated with exercise and with proper nutrition and sleep. Sleep, especially, decreasing the amount of stress. Insulin regulates the glucose uptake for energy. So you see this in a lot of insulin resistant individuals. It allows us to control the glucose or the sugar in the body for energy. Too much, you may crash. Too little, again, same thing. You may be on too much of a downslope. There's a body control for that. Um, Exercise will stimulate acute hormonal responses like spike in testosterone or growth hormone after strength training. So you may be lifting heavy weight. You're going to see an uptick in those two. It may not be as big as others, but you're going to see an uptick, men and women. Now, the difference is men's bodies will correlate differently than women's bodies. So we'll get into that a little bit more down the road. While chronic training, the endocrine system adapts, which supports long-term increase in strength, hypertrophy, and endurance. So the more that your body trains, the more that you are building, the more that your body and your endocrine system will change with it. So you see this in individuals. I'll go back to the freshmen versus seniors. Freshmen who are new to all of this may not have as apt increases in strength right away. You may see a big jump, and then they'll progress it. As long as they keep their training going, they're going to see bigger jumps and not bigger jumps. They're going to see an increase in their system. So they'll be healthier. Their growth hormone will allow for that tissue to keep building. The natural testosterone will allow for muscle growth and repair, especially after tearing it down during training. And then understanding the hormonal responses helps coaches design programs. This allows us to maximize adaptations and minimize negative stress. So if I put you or an athlete or whoever it may be in a situation where we are always doing high intensity work and never having a rest period, your body's going to adapt too far to that. We may actually lose the testosterone and the growth hormone that we really want in that system and start adding more cortisol because the body is so stressed and doesn't have time to recover, doesn't have time to build the systems that it needs. It will deteriorate and start to slow the processes that we really want. And then how does this apply and correlate together? No system, as I said at the beginning, is isolated. Movement and performance really depend on the integration. So we need not just the anatomy, not just how to run, how to lift. We need to understand what the body is doing so that we can control the body from that standpoint. For example, if a squat requires the skeletal system for structure, the muscle system for the force, and then the nervous system for the coordination. But it also needs the cardiovascular for the oxygen delivery in a heavy squat. It needs the respiratory to release the carbon dioxide as we go, and the endocrine after which, so that we can recover and adapt from that standpoint. So everything has to go into one. It's not just, oh, I'm lifting heavy weight. I just need my muscle and my bones. You need to understand how to breathe through that movement, how to recover after heavy lifts, how to recover after light lifts. It really depends on everything. Training impacts each system differently. Strength training, for instance, primarily stresses the muscle and the nervous system, but it also triggers cardiovascular and endocrine. So, again, going back to that example of the squat, we can't just rely on one. And many coaches, myself, when I at early on included, need to understand that it's not just one piece. Everything correlates to the other. So it encompasses every system that we just talked about today to understand how to train an athlete properly in the most effective way possible. As coaches, we consider all these systems when designing the program. That way, we have a balance to what we're doing. Again, I can't just come in here and say, all right, all we're doing is lifting. We're not going to do anything else. We're not going to run. We're not going to do speed. We're not going to do conditioning. We're not going to do anything. In the weight room, we may do that. We may lend to sport coaches and say, hey, I would like you to do this running today at the end while I'm doing training. It puts everything into one. And that allows us to avoid overtraining. The big takeaway of this is structure enables function, and function drives performance. So if you have a better function, your performance is going to go up. If you have better structure, that means your function will be better, and then your function will elevate your performance. It all correlates into one. That is the end of the slide today and the presentation. Again, the rest of the presentations will be uploaded on Sundays, Sunday nights. That way you have the entire week to go through them, and I will keep you updated as I put assignments or modules or discussion posts on our D2L page. Have a great day. I'll see you guys next week.